Okay, so I want to talk about Akira Kurosawa's dreams in this episode and make up for the fact that I started talking about cinema with such a vulgarity as a substance. And this film is really cool. It ties to a lot of things I find interesting as an actor. But also, I think it's interesting to talk about a lot of themes that are relevant generally in poetic terms, I would say, and things that are related, like nature, its ties to poetry, to spirituality, and also fairy tales. And that's why I really like the first two dreams because these are the ones that highlight most beautifully, most aesthetically these themes. We start with the fox wedding, which is like a little beautiful fairy tale that has this really ritualized and beautiful dance procession going on, and it also involves these very interesting themes about the spirituality, this Shinto view of nature. And then we have the cherry blossoms dream, which also has a lot of these elements. You have a bigger, incredibly beautiful dance sequence, which really exploits well the medium. It might be the most beautiful scene in the movie. And just to contrast and give an idea where I want to go with this, the next dreams are also pretty beautiful, but there we start getting more into kind of like a didactic tale. It becomes, in that sense, a bit more lazy in terms of its storytelling, easier and kind of simplistic, bourgeois, if you want to take that approach. This very naive understanding of art as a didactic tool, in a sense of this is bad, this is wrong, and I think it's not that marked. Like the next dream after the first two is a soul. I think it's a wait. I think it's the solar sequence, and then we have the blizzard. But in the solar sequence, even though it's emotionally very powerful, we start getting that more didactic element. But here probably less obvious than in the other ones because I think it does work well, and the images are also very interesting, and it's also very powerful to contrast the more dense, ritualized movement that we had in the first two sequences, and then goes on to this martial movement, right? The soldiers' movement, and I think that makes a powerful contrast, and makes us really compare them, and then we have another one that we have the blizzard dream, which I really didn't care for that much. I think it was strong, but but in terms of what it wanted to convey, I thought it was a bit weaker. I don't. It has a save for this kind of spirit of snow that comes in and is very beautifully filmed. Um, the rest just seems a little bit raw in comparison to the others. And then we have like a sort of wasteland scene, which is, I think, well, no, I think we have the Van Gogh dream. And here I thought that was an interesting inclusion, considering how Japanese the whole collection of dreams is. We have a really interesting kind of like an admiration of this kind of Western art, which is yeah, really interesting in a piece that in some places feels very traditionally minded. Um, so a lot of things were nice in there, and but yeah, I don't think it generally plays that much into the rest of the collection. And then we have this kind of like a wasteland, nuclear apocalyptic setting. Tales. We have like first this kind of like the setting off of the nuclear plants. So like, and then we have like the wasteland, the post-apocalyptic setting, and even though they're beautifully done, this is where it feels is very obvious that it's, you know, like being didactic, and it gets even like more obvious at the end with this kind of utopia that like the watermill utopia. So that's I guess like the basic overview of the sequence of dreams, um, and yeah, I think it dreams. What is interesting about dreams is precisely this lack of moral framing. You know, that dreams escape all those confined structures we live through each day. So, just from a dream perspective, um, a lot of them don't really work. It's more like they're talking more about fantasy, about um, fairy tales, and these kind of elements more than what really is dreamlike, which is to access the perspective that goes beyond those the rigidity of waking life. But then again, even if it weren't about dreams, art also wants to go to that place. In a lot of sense, in a lot of ways, art is trying to learn from dreams. The word dream even comes from the word that was used for a musician, if I'm remembering correctly right now. So there's this place where we want to almost mix both, to be able to give a dream-like waking vision, and that's why the didactic can fall flat, or be less effective as art, and it also ties, I guess, to these notions of it's not only from This Is Good. Well, we've talked about what the movie tries to say is bad, but also when you try to say something is good, it also can fall into this very naive, simplistic understanding of things. Um, we can, like, for example, this a spiritual aspect, both through nature, but we could even talk about it independently. Where we could talk about, in a sense, the spiritual being inherently good. And that's why the first fairy tales work better because it's more nuanced than that. The encounter, this beautiful encounter with like the spirit fox wedding procession. It's really beautiful, but it's also catastrophic for this child, and it angers these spirits who now want to take his life or make him take his own. And there's also this more complex relationship with the cherry blossom spirits, which are angry, accusatory, and but then there's also this process of spiritual revelation, growth, and beauty, right? When the kid stands up to them and reveals his purity in a way, his aesthetic refinement in his enjoyment of the cherry blossoms. So yeah, it has that ambivalent nature. It's not just it's not as naive as the last piece wants to, for example, make make natural living seem. Nature is not this idyllic, harmonic place of the spirit. Yeah, it does involve catastrophic elements, just as the ones the nuclear disasters brought upon the town, upon Japan in the story. For example, on my mother's side, that grew up in the jungles of Chiapas, it's yes, one of the most beautiful places on earth, but also it's incredibly violent, and there's no amount of natural disasters that land does not encounter recurrently. When my mother grew up there, they grew up next to a beautiful river that allowed boats to do commerce, and it had fishes, and it was in general just a beautiful life full place, and then it got destroyed and polluted, and it killed all the life. All the life died in there, and it wasn't because of human stupidity and hubris. It was because a volcano erupted, and it filled with sulfur and poisonous ashes the river, and killed almost all life, almost all trees, all cattle, everything around it, and like almost 40 years after, the river has still not recovered. It hasn't been able to carry out all the ash, all this poison out of it. So, and that's just one of the things, and it's also why the land is so fertile, so verdant, and there's these cycles, and just just having this utopian perspective of it is just clearly naive, and that's why I say it's kind of bourgeois, because it's this fantasy that people who live in the cities have, right? Because they only experience nature through vacations. They go to the beaches. They go on walking tracks up to the mountain or stuff like that. They don't really experience it as really this almost Luddite experience of living in nature seems to suggest. And and yeah, I could go on a little bit more again with how we have similar perspectives about the spiritual and why it's so dangerous to really have this naive, all the spiritual is good, hippie kind of like understanding of religion, and a lot of, well, not religion. I don't want to go that far, but of what is a spiritual, like this new agey, like reaction to the materialism that then thinks that all the spiritual stuff is good, and even if you don't necessarily want to call it that, but because of course part of it is we don't have really sophisticated language to go about it, and what the spiritual is, and this word is just a blanket term that makes it easier, but people stay on that level of superficiality. And I guess another example is like how we treat psychedelics and these kind of drugs, where we think of them as absolutely positive, like the Joe Rogan kind of approach that almost everybody should be taking drugs, and then that would awaken their spiritual side, and that would make the world a better place, right? Ignoring that these experiences have terrible inherent dangers to them too, right? It's foolish to think of them like that. There's a reason, why like administering them implied such a rigorous shamanic training, right? It was a profession handed down traditionally, and now it's a party drug almost, and with no amount of shortage of horror stories going around those kind of things. So I think that's why I thought it was interesting to talk about Akira Kurosawa's dreams. The good and the bad, because that's what's also kind of interesting. Because the first two dreams are I think are really good, and then it just goes into this really childish. And a lot of them, because it's also not that he goes full on didactic. Almost all of them have really beautiful things too, right? And things that are well done, beautiful, and etc. But I think it's important to highlight the contrast that exists between these different objectives in art, and which is not necessarily also as banal as saying like art for art's sake. I think that's slightly useful, but it becomes almost nonsensical past thinking about it for 5 minutes. So yeah, I think that's most of what I want to bring out about it. It's more about certain discussions, I guess, about art and aesthetics more than necessarily a lot of the film itself, you know. But hope it was interesting. So thank you all for listening, and I'll see you soon for some more cinema discussions.